Welcome to Fantastic Vision. Please subscribe us before you watch today's video. Even under the strictest sanctions from the United States, Huawei still produced its own high-end mobile phones, which made the United States exclaim, "Where do Huawei's chips come from?" No company in the world produces chips for Huawei, and high-end photolithography machines are not sold to China. This makes the United States feel that there is still a problem in some sanctions links, such as companies related to Huawei. As a result, the United States introduced new sanctions policies. In the new sanctions policy, companies that have dealings with Huawei will be included in the sanctions list by the United States, which can force some companies to cut off business dealings with Huawei. In order to make this kind of sanctions more effective, the United States also prohibits the lithography machine company ASML from repairing lithography machines in mainland China. To turn China's photolithography machines into scrap metal, such sanctions can be described as malicious. Without the support of related companies, it will still be very difficult for Huawei to continue to launch its own high-end mobile phones. The introduction of this US sanctions policy has put Huawei still under great pressure. But this does not mean that Huawei is incapable of reversing this unfavorable situation. You must know that the US sanctions against Huawei were also very strict before. At the time, it seemed that there was almost no way for Huawei to break through such sanctions. Many people were waiting for Huawei to fall so that they could replace it. But Huawei did not fall easily, but stood up again tenaciously. There are still ways to deal with such sanctions from the United States. Moreover, not only is China trying its best to break through the sanctions, but companies that sell photolithography machines are also very anxious like China and want to find ways to break through these sanctions. Previously, Japan's Nikon company produced photolithography machines specifically for China. In addition to the US sanctions policy, it avoided all risks and customized photolithography machines to satisfy Chinese customers. This method of saving the country through curves is very easy to use, and ASML is also learning from this method. In the first 2 months of 2024 alone, ASML sold 32 photolithography machines to China, most of which were exported to China in this form. As for the US policy prohibiting repairs of existing Chinese photolithography machines, ASML can naturally use similar roundabout methods to find ways to repair Chinese customers. You must know that if it cannot be repaired, according to the contract, ASML will buy back all these photolithography machines. This is absolutely stressful for ASML. This may be the darkest moment, but as long as China works together to get through this period, light will be waiting for China not far away. China is now able to achieve self-sufficiency in 28 nanometers mature chips, and through new exposure technology, it can produce 14 nanometers chips. In addition, China's lithography machine factories are also undergoing intense research and development. Given time, China will be able to completely break through the US blockade and sanctions. According to reports from South Korea's authoritative chip media, based on the current world's chip R&D and production capabilities, China will become the largest country in the world's chip industry in the near future. If it comes true, let alone the United States imposing sanctions on China, it may be China that will impose sanctions on them. Even though the United States has strong scientific and technological strength, this is commercial technology, and it is impossible to stop China's development by blindly banning it. On the contrary, in recent years, everyone should be aware that more and more Chinese companies have been added to the entity list by the United States, and one thing they have in common is that their technology is leading in some aspects, of which Huawei is a typical example. Case. In fact, this also shows that China's technological progress is getting faster and faster. If they can't compete, they will impose sanctions and suppress them. Just like after Huawei took the lead in 5G, the United States blocked it in every possible way, but now there is a situation of joining if you can't beat it. Although Huawei is a private company, it has become a pioneer in China's technological breakthrough. Recently, there was an interview with a retiree from Huawei on the internet. Many people must have read it. He talked about the contributions Huawei has made. China knows that China has lagged behind in development in many aspects before, and the communications industry is no exception. Nowadays, it is very convenient, simple and affordable to make calls with mobile phones in China. But back then, if you wanted to install a phone, you had to pay nearly 10,000 yuan extra. That's because communication equipment is all imported from abroad. They have a monopoly on technology and equipment, and they have the final say on how much it costs. What changed this situation was actually communications companies such as Huawei. They went through many difficulties, not only spending money and time on research and development, but also facing patent barriers and obstruction from others, before they developed equipment that could also be replaced. Although China is still buying equipment from foreign companies such as Ericsson and Nokia, they no longer dare to ask for random prices. Huawei not only ranks first in the world in communication equipment, but also leads in communication standards. Previously, China was blank in 1G, following in 2G, breaking through in 3G, and running concurrently in 4G. Huawei finally gained dominance in 5G communication standards. Taking the lead in 5G will bring immeasurable benefits to the Chinese country and people, but Huawei will face unimaginable difficulties. Subsequently, the United States implemented multiple rounds of severe sanctions, because China's lead is touching other people's cheese. In fact, Ren Zhengfei had anticipated this a long time ago, and knew that he would experience great suffering, but Huawei people still moved forward unwaveringly. Why do this? China can see that people in the West can easily live a high-paying life, because they are at the top of technology, and can make more profits with patents. So why can't China do the same? Huawei has been doing this kind of thing. It is not an illusion to invest so much every year. Huawei's patents every year rank at the forefront among global technology giants. Many key technologies have surpassed foreign countries and achieved domestic substitution. Therefore, the United States is so afraid of Huawei. It not only imposes chip restrictions on Huawei, but also blocks many European countries from using Huawei 5G. But a few years have passed, and countries that have rejected or excluded Huawei's 5G have fallen behind in 5G. Even though Europe has two established communication equipment giants, Ericsson and Nokia, they still cannot circumvent Huawei's patents. Because Huawei has been operating in Europe for many years, many European countries use Huawei's 4G equipment, and even their operators recognize Huawei very much. After all, Huawei's communication equipment is not only high quality and low priced, but its services are also very good. For them, continuing to use Huawei's 5G equipment is their best choice, but the United States obstruction has caused them to take many detours, not only causing huge losses, but also wasting a lot of time. As a result, European countries began to see the true nature of the matter. France has taken the lead in opening its doors and allowing Huawei to restart the construction of its first overseas communications factory. The factory was previously shelved because the United States was obstructing European countries. Now, France has chosen to continue to cooperate with Huawei and restart the construction of the factory. This not only reflects France's attitude, but also shows that the European market is beginning to change. Huawei's French factory is expected to be put into operation in 2025. It mainly produces 4G and 5G communication equipment. It will have an annual output value of 1 billion units and is aimed at the European market. This also indicates that Huawei is returning to the European market. After all, Huawei's communication equipment is the best choice. Now it not only continues to lead in 5G, but also in 5.5G. Therefore, if European countries want to make up for their shortcomings in 5G construction, they can only re-accept Huawei. This is also join if you can't beat it. Sure enough, as Ren Zhengfei said, Huawei's 5G is the best in the world, and it is their loss not to use it. In this regard, some foreign media directly stated that Huawei will return to Europe, and the US's obstruction will ultimately be short-lived and in vain. Such a result is actually the work of Huawei people. As the Huawei person said, don't just look at the high wages of Huawei people. Not everyone can do it, and it is not something that ordinary people can withstand, because they are equal to you as at war. Baijiakuiping has played a certain role in promoting China's chip industry.